Welcome, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Sid Sarasvati, and I'm here in Boston. I've been in the US for about 14 years. So I came here for school, RIT, upstate New York in 2010. And my journey, as you know, like most of you all, started with F1 to OPT to CPT to H1B to multiple H1Bs to EB2 to then self-sponsoring my own H1B through the company that I started myself and bootstrapped it. So that happened this year, and I wrote a post about it on LinkedIn called I Sponsored My Own H1B, which got more popular and viral than I thought it would, and which kind of spoke about the desperation and the lack of information we all have being a founder in this country, US, if you are in here on an H1B visa. And I struggled through that myself for about 3 to 4 years. I would say from 2020, I had ideas or a real temptation to start a company. Then the pandemic happened, and I was refining my ideas. But it was the real push when I was at my last employment, and I knew that I would be ended any time given the recession and the downturn that happened that pushed me through, I would say, the last leg of really figuring things out. And when I did, everything I read online was just wrong. I think it was ill-informed and full of fear and full of myths that would most likely, would not let anybody on H1B visa to ever even touch or start or think about being a founder. So that's the reason I wrote that article. Just, not a legal advice, by the way. Everything I say here is not to be taken as a legal advice. My goal is to share my experience, answer the questions, talk about things I know, and even recommend the attorneys and the lawyers, corporate lawyers, immigration lawyers, accountants that I worked with. We can all share with each other. By the way, it'll be really cool to know on the chat if you all can just type in your visa status so I understand where to pause and how much to assume. So H1B, yeah, so most of you are H1B, I-140, very cool. Yeah, put in I-140 if you have one approved. H1, I would say more than the median, 80% of all of you are H1B with I-140 approved. And one problem we know, if you're from India or China, born in India or China, is that EB2 is on a perpetual backlog of, now they say, over 100 years, which means you're very unlikely to get through the wait list of filing for adjustment of status. So they will never allow you to file for adjustment of status to get your green card, but you can renew your H1B as long as you have an employment. And that was my status too. I had my H1 EB2 filed around 2016 and 17. The priority date for India right now, I think, is at 2012. And it has taken years and years to even, it has taken 5 years, I guess, to go from 2011 October to 2012 April or something. We all have to figure out something, an alternative, especially, India and China, people coming in on H1B, having an I-140, living here in the country for about 10 years, 15 years, and then being so restricted, which is, I would say that's totally anti-American. I don't think even the USCIS actually likes it. I've heard the webinar and talks by the new president, and I think they're trying to make this better. One thing I think you should understand about USCIS and other organization is they're not here to get you, right? To like, if you make a mistake and they want to just grab you and throw you out of the country. The American dream of you working hard, being a founder is all well respected. And as long as you figure out a way to be in compliance and start a company and be legit, you will figure a way out to your green card. What I wanted to do was today call my co-founder, Ercan. He and I started the company 2022, November. So this was a time when I was working with my employer, and I decided to take the leap. Founding a company is absolutely legal, H1B. And I've talked about this multiple times that my friends in India have a company in US. So you don't even have to be in US to start an entity. You can just go online and start one today. the and compliance issues start when you have to start taking paychecks and to be on a payroll. And if you leave your current visa status of H1B, so that's where the problem starts. So, Arjan, do you want to jump into the call now? Okay, so Arjan is in Canada, and I founded a company with him. So he was in Canada, I was in US, and it was just two of us, full ownership. We filed an entity through Stripe, Delaware, C Corp. Nothing extraordinary about that. Anybody can do it. A lot of people have asked that, does the co-founder have to be in the US? They don't. So here's an example right here. And let me stop there. There's a little bit of a board of director issue that I had to solve to create an employer-employee relationship that I will touch on later. But Arjan, tell us about your journey from Turkey to Canada.
Yeah. So first of all, my name is Ercan Özer, and like 4 or 5 years ago, I always had an idea of how I can move to US or Canada, like start just a new life. And when I was exploring the US, was really a hard option and a bit more dream option comparing to Canada for Turkish people. Since my father was had also US visa, and somehow we decided to move. He decided to move to Canada, and after that, I was able to apply for permanent residence application separately. If you have relative or like any dependent in Canada, it's very easy to just like try to apply for visa, and path to permanent residence is very likely to happen. So that's the path I took, and through the process, the Canada PR application also takes some time, but there are some tricks you can do. Like for example, if the processing time is very long for some countries, you can try to move your current address from that country to another country, and like try to change the processing time by moving your like current country. Like that's what I did. For example, I moved to a country in Europe from Turkey because that Canada embassy was processing the files much faster than Turkey. So those are the few things I did, and like literally I was able to get to Canada in less than like 2.5 years with all, and get my permanent residence in my hand. And I've been in Canada more than 2 years now, and hopefully I will be able to become citizen in next May. So I think like Canada is moving way faster comparing to US, but there are some trade-offs which you need to do if you are coming to Canada. I see Canada as like a place where you can really like, if you are not ready for use all the the US has more strict rules and everything. So I think Canada is a place like, okay, if you wanna just calm down for like few years and decide later, I think that's the place for those people. And that's pretty much. And after that, after I met with Sid, we have worked for 2 years in the same company. Then while founding the tried and error, I had also a bunch of questions. Okay, like if I can create a company from Canada to US, right? If there will be any issues. And also there are a bunch of other issues that might happen with like taxes. And also like I'm not a Canadian citizen yet, and I'm also from Turkey. And if it's gonna be issue in Turkey or something. So there was lots of questions in my head, but once we did dive into this, like then we learned like the only thing I needed is just my Turkish passport, like nothing else. Like I only needed my Turkish passport and not even any Canadian document to just be a co-founder in a US company.
So what's your plan of coming to US?
So right now, luckily, once I can come to US with like different visas and like before I become Canadian citizen. But after we research, like after I become Canadian citizen next May, it's very easy to get a visa, for example, like by just sponsoring myself in the company and just move to US in just few months. Or I can get I also can visit the US anytime, so I don't have any restriction just to visit the US. So probably I'll be moving to US fully next year after I become citizen, because everything is just gonna be much easier once I have the Canadian passport. That's like a green light to everywhere.
Yeah, there are multiple paths. It's just in case anybody is curious about it. Now, we could file Arjan's O1 visa, which, for those who are not familiar, O1 is the alternative to H1B on the employment side of a work visa coming to US. Now, that requires, filing this 9 criteria, building a profile. It's a lot of paperwork and a lot of cost. And, we work remotely, so we don't really have a need to do that right now. We could do H1B as well. We could look at that. There's a business visa he could take, but the appointments take a long time. I think the wait list is like 6 to 8 months. So, if he could have gotten a business visa easily, he could have done a back and forth rather quickly. Do you guys in chat have any quick questions or quick thoughts? Please type in the chat. Let me take this one. Is there a preference between H1B and O1? So, well, there is. I mean, there's a lot of implications of each. Now, the biggest reason you want to do an O1 visa, so O1 is extraordinary skills, right? H1B, you got to prove that you have a specialized job that pertains to your specialized degree. So I have a degree, MS or bachelor's, doesn't need to be a master's in computer science, and I get a software engineering job. So that matches up. And I need to get a salary that matches the minimum salary as set by LCA for my area. O1 doesn't have a salary cap. So most founders, if you can't afford your salary and you want to hire somebody with a lower salary, can do an O1 visa, different filing process. That's one way you prefer O1 visa. And there are dependent visa issues with O1, which we can go into detail. It's just like H4 is your spouse can work on your spouse. It's not automatically that they get an EAD to work on. More questions, list of services. Compile a list of services running a C Corp. Yeah, I'd love to do it. I think the reason I want to do it is because, A, we've been very picky about it. Our stack, we maintain our corporate stack no different than a tech stack, right? So use the right library, cheap, open source, without paying too much money. So maybe some other business call, we can do that. Taxation, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, foreign qualification. So I'm using Gusto for all that. Gusto is working very well. We have interns in our company on a contract. So you give 1099. That's pretty easy to do. And there is no state compliance on contracts other than 1099. When you hire somebody on a W-2, which I am an employee of my company, and I am W-2, and I'm in Massachusetts. So I need to comply with the payroll, unemployment. Gusto is a great, HR tool that lets me do that. And I think they're pretty cheap too. Each contractor I add there is like $9 a month, and full-time is probably similar, 30 to 40. Okay, let me look at the chat very quickly. This is Netflix content for a series. I agree. Was the second EB1 filing after switching to trial and error? I was running trial and error, but I wasn't officially on W-2. So it depends what you mean, right? Switching. So I was not on a payroll for trial and error. I was on, and I couldn't be at that time because I didn't have much revenue. My revenue started coming in. I think both Ercan and I had a goal to afford our salaries so we could quit the job. And that was my only goal. And my goal was that how much money I do need every month. Can we achieve that in profits every month? And as soon as I hit that, I switched. And obviously there's a risk, and there's the money I put in the company and all that. So there's a risk. Starting a business is a risk. Do you not have to move to another country for EB1A? Not at all. I think you're talking about EB1C, which is a manager visa where you go to a different country and you become a manager for a US company and come back and file your EB1C. And that actually is on a big backlog now because I think during the pandemic it got overused. Could you not use your EAD and AP? What is AP again? Type it in the chat if I don't know what AP stands here. So you're saying since I filed my adjustment of status, I could get my EAD and I could get my travel document, advance parole. Gotcha. So funny enough, I got my EAD a week before I got my green card. So you know the answer after that, right? That's how it happens. Funny enough, sometimes people get the green card before their EAD, and it's not uncommon these days. It's just a sequence of those things don't make any sense. Let's get to the next part of the call, which is your Slido questions. How many of you here in the chat actually have a legal entity in US? I see one in the process. Very good. More power to you, my man. So I assume people are saying +1 to mean that they have it too. That's very cool. I'm very impressed to see that. I think people on the call who are wondering, +1, I see a lot of +1s. So this is actually incredible, a work in progress. So anybody in the call who doesn't have a legal entity, I'm sharing on the screen too. So you just look at your fellow OPT, EB1, F1, H1B folks, right? don't be hesitant about founding a company. And that's perfectly legal. All right. So here are the questions. So how much funds do we have to show when we file for H1B through our company? What is USCIS looking for? They're looking to make sure that business is legit. So you need to have a business plan. You need to share if you have, account receivable, which is a contracts that people have signed and they could give you money in the future that you could show. So it doesn't have to be a bank account. If you have funding, that's awesome. That's just an award. That's just like, I will just make your case. But overall, you should be able to afford the salary of your beneficiary, which is the H1B you're filing. So then it comes to down to what H1B are you filing and what is their salary, right? I hired myself as a principal engineer. So, and I was in Boston. So it depends on your location, depends on your title, and can you afford that for 1 year roughly, right? So if you can show that, and if you can show your 3 month of bank account, and you can show that your business generates revenue, then you make a proper case, and then your attorney will help you, right? They will tell you. Most attorneys who file for these kind of H1B, they've seen a lot of companies like ours, an H1B, and they can tell you and guide you what else you need to provide. But you need to back it up. Mostly back it up with evidence that you are going to be able to afford the salary. They are not really looking for you are a $1 billion business. That's not what the goal here. Not every business is a $1 billion business. There are restaurants that are losing money every day, right? So, but you need to show that you're filing a petition for somebody and you can afford to give that salary. If someone is not in the US, but they start a US company, how can they come into the country? It's a $1 million question. They can file their O1 visa. That's how you come to the country, right? One is your way because it doesn't have a lottery. H1B, you get into a lottery system and it's basically luck by chance and there's no other way. It's not skill-based at that point. But if you get an O1 visa and you have a company and you can prove your skills, a lot of people in Bay Area right now, this year alone, have come from O1 visa that I know of. Can everyone get O1? Well, not everyone in the world, but you have 9 criteria and you have to make a case for yourself that you are skilled in your specific thing you're filing for. I think you can get a very good free evaluation from a lot of attorneys. Ask that question on WhatsApp group, but you can get a self-evaluation and see where you stand. So it depends on your profile. All right, second question here. How would a board consisting only of husband and wife will be perceived? So, all right, so let's talk about the board. So why do you need a board? So when you file your own H1B or when any company files an H1B beneficiary needs to have an employer-employee relationship. That means somebody needs to be able to fire the H1B person. You can't have a veto power in your company. Now, since I am the owner of the company, right, and I had equity in the company, high equity, I had to create a board to prove that the majority could outvote me. And that's how you do it. But you can put your spouse on the board as advised by my attorney. So you can put somebody else. You can put your friend. Just make it look independent. But they don't have to have equity in the company. You don't need to pay them salary. And they don't have to have specialized skills into your domain. Steps to follow after layoff to start my own company and apply for H1. Outside grace period and change to B2. Is own company approach still possible? Well, I guess your grace period is 60 days. It took us 1 year to get to a point where I could afford my salary for my business. Unless you have an idea, you can do it. You can do anything you want. I don't think I can say that you can be a profitable business in 30 days. I don't know, right? But can you? Ask yourself, right? Can you build a profitable business or revenue generating business in 30 days? If you can, then you have all the pieces you need to file your H1B. You just need to have the pieces together, which is you need to have a business. You need to have a legit business with a plan, with revenue, right? It should be doing some trade. Somebody should be buying something. And as soon as you prove all those things, you have a business. And then that business can file for H1B. No different than any other business. After grace, if status is changed to B2, can we form a company on that visa? You can form a company in any visa. I don't think like I said, founding a company is no problem. You can be an owner not having a US visa as well, right? So being an owner is no problem. I hope that's clear. You can have a follow-up question and ask in the chat, but treat these things independent, okay? Start an entity. It doesn't matter what your visa is, okay? Now that entity is a business. It's a US business. A US business, as per the law, can do certain things. It can hire people. It can hire international people. How can that business hire H1B? Okay, just like any other business. It should be able to afford the salary. It should be able to create a job for that specialized role and then file that H1B. And that person could be you, yourself. How do you handle payroll and other state federal compliance? I use Gusto. Are there any other legal requirements to consider after approval beside petition?
I mean, the payroll taxes, good that we have Gusto, like manage most of the things, but business taxes, we need to handle these ourselves separately outside of Gusto. But there are tools for them as well, which we are using. But I don't think, are there there are any other requirements that we are missing?
You need a bank account. I use Mercury. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a business. Banking, I've been very happy with them. Bookkeeping, I use puzzle.io. That's AI-based new app. Pretty cool. I'll see if I can get like a discount referral or something like that and share on WhatsApp. So most of the things I've answered before. What type of company is eligible for self H1B? Any good attorney for the self petition? So yeah, I'll give you a recommendation. Send me a DM there. I think I've hooked up a few people, but find an attorney that knows about this thing. That's my recommendation. So talk about your situation. Finding an attorney is no different than hiring somebody. You got to interview them. You got to see what they want. Don't just assume that every attorney knows everything. Right? Sure, I can suggest an attorney. Send me a DM and I will recommend you. Actually, for people asking for attorney, I will send you my email here. Send me an email there, right? A little bit about you, like what your status is and you're looking for an attorney, and I can connect you with them. Cool. Okay, that's it. I guess for this call, I'm going to prioritize now for 5 minutes people who have joined live. So anybody on the call, chat is yours. Just think we can spend 5 more minutes. So put anything you want or share your story. All right. So could we please know your EB1 profile? Look at my LinkedIn. I can give you my LinkedIn link. Has anybody used services like Google Zoom? I have not. I think I met somebody today who used it. Question from Slido. Do you anticipate issues when trying to return to US when you are on self-sponsored H1B? I mean, that's just that question. Can this question ever be answered? It's kind of like asking, do you anticipate issues when you're returning for H1B? Forget self-sponsored, right? It's the same answer. I mean, you have an H1B. As long as it's legal, it's legit, it's approved. I don't know.
We would need to bring the border police and ask him. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody can answer that question, not even attorneys. They'll say that take your documentation with you, take your offer letter, right? When you travel to international, and this is what your attorney will tell you too, but I wouldn't travel outside without an offer letter on a company letterhead, right? So have your company letterhead with that, have an offer letter in that, to show that continuation of employment. So when you're coming back, say that, okay, you're going to continue working in the company, and you have your H1B documentation, and if you're going for stamping and all that, so just a regular H1B thing. I mean, all these rules are for regular H1B. There's nothing special about self-sponsor. By the way, self-sponsor is a wrong word. I hope you guys know that, right? You're really not doing self-sponsorship, right? Because a petitioner, you need a petitioner for this. The petitioner is the company. Company is a legal entity. So as long as a legal entity sponsors your H1B, I don't know why should the rules be any different, right? I mean, I've worked for non-public company throughout my life.
One thing I also, in the beginning, I also had a bunch of questions about this, and one thing helped me. So you mentioned about this idea, thinking the entity is like a separate person, right? It's a person itself, and it's not related to you. And whatever the entity is doing, it's like a separate person. It has everything independent from you, and it's just sponsoring you. It's not like self-sponsoring. Another entity is just sponsoring you.
Yes.
So that's what I always kept thinking, instead of just thinking, okay, this is our company, I'm sponsoring myself. Once you stop thinking like that, and it's just, there's no separation legally between self-sponsoring H1B and getting sponsored by another company. So once you think it's fully a separated entity, then I think it's much easier to think about this.
All right. Did you mention about the type of business eligible for startup-based visa? Type of business. for startup-based visa. So they're both, if I'm a lawyer reading this, I wouldn't answer it because they mean 100 different things, right? So every business is eligible to hire international talent if you create a job for it, right? So which business, if you're in IT, which business doesn't need IT? I mean, you can have an IT manager, right? Or a software engineer if you have a website. So you can create a job. Once you create a job, is that job qualified for that H1B beneficiary? Depends on their master's degree or bachelor's degree because it's a specialized skill. So it's a basic H1B thing, nothing to do with your startup. So all businesses are eligible. Outside the legal stuff, how did you both decide to be co-founders? Seeing your profile said was Ercan's manager, correct? Good investigation work, Ajay. So Ercan is one of the most extraordinary engineer I ever worked with. And I was his manager. And one day, true story, I was very angry. And I was talking to this product manager that was telling me that we are replacing our authentication service over the weekend and going to migrate 1 million of users to a different provider. And I was like, how can we do it over the weekend? And which team is doing it? And I heard a user management team is doing it. And I was just unhappy about it, and I found out on Monday that that user management team is actually not even a team. It's one person. And that person was Ercan. And I was like, this one person did the entire thing. We are risking $1 billion business on this one guy who owns all of these things. And then a week later, Ercan was actually a consultant, a contractor for the company. He was in a different part of Europe at that time. And then I learned that he was 21 years old. At that time, he was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I was so shocked. I was so shocked that how is it that a 20-year-old is owning like 15 microservices, changing all this auth thing, distributed systems, migrating everybody out of a different auth provider, and nobody got logged out. Everything worked fine. So then he worked with me and my team to mobile and all that. So he was great and extraordinary. And, when you are aspiring founders, and I've looked for a founder for a very long time. So if any of you are thinking about having a co-founder, I'll give you my tip. I've come down to the following formula. Look for somebody who can bet on themselves. That's the criteria. You can look for many things, but if you have somebody who can't bet on themselves, likely they won't be able to match you what it takes to be a founder, right? So what does it mean, like in more detail? I would say it means if I had $100,000, would I give that money to myself in my own company, or would I make that an investment into a different company so that I get a 10x multiple, right? So I put my own money into this company to bootstrap it, right? That was me betting on myself rather than saying that I have 100K and can I just invest in my friend's startup and give him that money so that he can work hard and he can give me a 10x return on my money, right? So look for somebody who can bet on themselves. And second thing, look at just the match, right? The chemistry match. You guys have to work together. It's a very, very long-term thing. It's like a marriage. And if it doesn't work well, it's like, I think it sucks as much as divorce. It's pretty hard. So Ercan and I enjoy working for it. He takes care of engineering, so I don't have to. We're both engineer. I'm engineer by trade too, so I can do the business part, and he can take over all of the engineering. So that grouping really worked for us. I don't know why Ercan chose me, but we won't let him answer that.
No, I think overall, it just takes time to build the connection, and I think organically grows between people, right? It's not like you are looking for someone in just internet by just searching, but somehow develops organically between people, and you catch the chemistry. And even I think before we found the company, we were also spending time discussing things, right? We were mostly discussing about AI related things. We were reading things. So I think it just naturally happens.
We'd love to hear how you generate a revenue in a journey of Renovate AI. I mean, that's an amazing topic. We could do a session on the whole business side of things, especially SaaS and software as a service companies and internet economy, mobile app, consumer side of things. It was not easy, and we had to figure a lot of things out. I learned a lot. Ercan learned a lot. We're learning every day. But for internet companies, like which we are selling software, and it's like consumer focused. It's like really, really hard. B2B, you can get a contract, try to get connections and all that. Consumer focused is very hard to bootstrap. And what you have to figure out really more than the product is distribution. Distribution is very loaded. Distribution really means How do you get in front of the consumer to download your app, click on your website, to even try it? That alone, that problem alone, is what customer acquisition cost means, right? SCAC, your customer acquisition cost. You can get customers to try your website through ads, through press, virality, Instagram post, this, that. All of that is cost. What you realize is that you can do it. I can get a lot of users on my site, but the cost keeps increasing and increasing, gets harder and harder. And if you, like me, are thinking of bootstrapping a business, not a VC-backed business, you need to match your revenue, right, with your CAC. So as soon as you match that, then you have to optimize one or the other and get this revenue higher, right? So our focus was really get to a point where we're running ads, we're running this and that. Can we match our acquisition cost to our revenue? That was the only goal. So it comes down to really, really data-driven formula and all that, and learning how to run properly ads, how to optimize the ad, the right channel, where can you segment your customer, right? So we can get into details of that some other day. Roughly speaking, is once you hit that machine, once you bootstrap to a point, then it becomes easier. So you have a little bit of validation that it's possible, and then you double down on a few things that works. I have bought the domain h1bfounders.com, and that's why I'm recording this call. Let me put the domain here, right? So this is going to be our website. We'll put a wiki and a FAQ, and we'll use that for a lot of things. And if one of you is interested in developing it, we'll figure out a way to collaborate on that as well going forward. I do think as you guys figure it out, as I figured it out, and a lot of people, the problem is only going to become harder for people, not easier. I don't think immigration policy is going to change very quickly. So if you can give back a little bit, it takes nothing. It takes 1 hour of my time. I love sharing these things. And if it helps you, I'm sure you can help others too. So we'll get that site running and going. We'll try to post videos like this there, put a forum, get a wiki running. That over and out, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.